Chapter 16, yes. All right. Starting at verse 1. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. And Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to a sacrifice to the Lord, and invite Jesse to the sacrifice. I will show you what you shall do, and you shall anoint for me whom I declare to you. Samuel did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him, trembling, and said, do you come in peace? And he said, yes, I come in peace. I have come to a sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And he consecrated Jesse and his sons, and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked at Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is be before him. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance, on his height, or of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Then Jesse called Abinab, and he made him pass before Samuel, and he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. Then Jesse made Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen these. Then Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping sheep. Surely you don't want him. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes. Samuel said to Jesse, and he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, means red, and had beautiful eyes, and was handsome. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. I want to talk about when leaders fail. Failure in leadership is an unfortunate fact of life. One of the most common reasons why people don't go to church, or people choose not to be a Christian, is because the failure in church leadership. They will say, if your God is so great, why do we see pastor after pastor, church leader after church leader fail in leadership? Surely, if Christianity is real and your God is real, you wouldn't have all these failures. Although our Savior is perfect and has never failed, the church is filled with imperfect people. And sometimes pastors do fail, and sometimes they fail miserably. Our text is coming off the heels of a great leadership failure. Saul has failed. And this ain't the first time, but this is just the one time that the straw that broke the camel's back. God commands Saul to kill everything. Saul does not. He chooses what he wants to obey. And as a result, God rejects him as king. And Saul gives an insincere apology. But that insincere apology does not help him. You leave at the very end of chapter 15. Saul going one direction, Samuel going another. And the text says they never see each other again. At the very end, Samuel is mourning. Our text tells us what happens when leaders fail. First, God is going to rescue us. 2, he is going to change our focus. And 3, he's going to direct us to a new leader. First thing we see is that God is going to rescue us. In verses 1 and 2, the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul? How long will you mourn over the king that I have rejected? Since I have rejected him from being king over Israel, fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. And Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears of it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer with you, and he will kill you. Take a heifer with you, and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Samuel did what the Lord had commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him trembling, saying, do you come peaceably? And he said, peaceably, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourself and come with me to the sacrifice. And he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. First thing that we see is that God will rescue us from a hopeless and fearful condition. Samuel realizes the truth. Without God, Israel will fail. God has rejected Saul as king for not following his instruction. And this wasn't the first time. Saul had done this over and over again with an insincere apology. Sorry, God. I didn't mean to not do everything that you say for the umpteenth time. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 22 and 23, God, through the prophet Samuel, says this, Has the Lord as great delight in the burnt offerings and in the sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than a sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For a rebellion is a sin of divination, And the presumption is that in iniquity and idolatry, because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you from being king. God says, why are you mourning? Stop mourning, stop crying, because I have chosen a new king. But not only is he hopeless, but he's fearful. Saul is the most powerful one in Israel. He knows what he's going to do. When he hears that Samuel has anointed another king, he's going to see this as treason. He's going to kill him. It is not an option of if he is. He knows once he finds out, he's going to kill him. Second, God is going to rescue us by giving us new leadership. In verse 2 it says that he has provided another king. This word provided means to pick out. God has picked out a special person who will obey him and who will obey him everything that he says. He's not going to choose what he wants to obey and what he doesn't. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses 13 and 14, God speaks to Saul, and he says this: after another disobedience, he says, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God, with which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom forever. Saul, if you would have just done what God has told you, your kingdom will last forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. The Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord has commanded. Each one of you will be a leader at one point. At one point in your life that you're going to lead here, and you're going to be a leader. The question for you, what kind of leader are you going to be? Are you going to be a leader like Saul, who makes excuses for not obeying the Lord? Are you going to be a leader like Saul, who thinks you're always going to be a leader, and there isn't anything anyone or God can do about it? Saul was prideful. Saul could not obey the will of the Lord. You're going to be in leadership positions where it would be easier to disobey God and keep your position. It's going to be easier to lie and keep your position. It's going to be easier to steal and keep your position. It will be easier to disobey God and keep your position. So the question, will you obey God to the fullest? Will you obey? When leadership fails, not only will God rescue you, but God will change your focus from externals to internals. Look with me in verse 7. The Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearances, but the Lord looks on the heart. Every last one of us here struggle with looking on the appearance, what's on the outside. Samuel is no different. He's no different than each one of us. the challenge for each one of us to focus on the heart, to focus on the internals of that person and not on the outside. We all do this in a variety of ways, don't we? Is someone a grade A communicator? Surely that's who God wants for us, a great communicator. But often we focus so much on the external that we ignore, is his communication consistent with his life? We look for someone who is a charismatic leader, who can grab a hold of people and lead them into a direction, but we don't pay attention to where the charismatic leader is leading us. Sometimes we'll have friends who will lead us in a direction we know that we should not go. But we don't ask, are you leading me to a good direction? It's not like those things are unimportant, are they? It's important as a leader to be charismatic. It's important as a leader to be a good communicator. Not that those aren't unimportant, but they're not the most important. The most important is the heart of the person. The most important thing, are they devoted to Christ? Because only then and only then is God with them. I'd be dismissed if I didn't at least talk about what we see in a variety of churches today. There's the focus on, can we create an attraction? And if we create a good attraction, we'll grow our church. If we'll create a good attraction, we'll win people to Christ. And this is not more evident in the type of leaders that we choose. The type of leaders that you will one day choose. When you are involved in churches, and you'll be on boards, and you will be tasked. What kind of leader do we want for this church? My plea to you is, don't focus so much on the external, but focus on the internals. Focus on the heart. Look at their life. Look at make sure that their words match up with what they live. When leadership fails, not only will God rescue you from a hopeless and fearful condition, not only will God change your focus, but he will direct you to choose an unlikely and unqualified individual. Look with me in verses 11 through 13. Then Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? Are all of them here? And he says, there remains the youngest, but behold, he's keeping. You don't want a shepherd to be king, do you? And Samuel said to Jesse, send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes, and the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is my king. This is my king who will be devoted to me above everything else. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of the brothers. The Spirit of the Lord rushed on him upon that day forward. Samuel rose up and went. First thing that you see, the first thing that we see in our text, God chooses an unlikely candidate. This is a shepherd. He's the youngest. He had all these other sons, and God chooses the most unlikely person. Samuel, the prophet. This isn't who Samuel would have picked, but God chooses the unlikely to lead his people. Because it's often the unlikely who have hearts devoted to Him and Him alone. Each one of you will one day be a leader. Each one of you. In a variety of, it may be a very famous company like Microsoft, Sony, something like that. You may be a leader in a church. Or you could have your own business. And people are going to come up to you and say, you aren't going to be like anybody in that company. You're going to be different. And people are going to say, why are you here? Why? How did you get this job? You aren't like none of us. Which you can turn and say, God gave me this job. God put me here to be a light, to point people to Christ. That is what leadership is. Second, not only is David the most unlikely, he's the most unqualified. David!
Miss Cantor, could you report to Mrs. G's room? Thank you.
David! Not only is he the youngest, he doesn't know how to be king. He's the most unqualified person for the job. What does he know about being king? He's a shepherd. A young shepherd at that. He doesn't have any experience. Experience is important, but it's not the most important. Because God is able to give you the experience that you need. God is able to give you exactly what you... He's not as concerned... We focus so much on experience. Oh, you got to have X number of experience. Each one of you, you're going to get jobs that you have no experience for. None. And the only reason why you're there is because God put you there. That's the only... God is not as concerned about how much experience you have than He is, what is your heart like? Is your heart devoted to Him and Him alone? And what you will find when your heart is devoted to Him and Him alone, you will find yourself in places that you know you shouldn't be. When you leave here and you go back to your country, you're going to find yourself in positions that you know that you are not qualified for. And there's only one reason why you are there. Because God put you there. God put you there to be a light. God put you there to proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. You are there strictly to be a light. And God is going to put you in that place so you can be blessed and so you can bless others. One of the very interesting things, Mr. Dean left. He's no longer here. One of the interesting things about Mr. Dean, he is the most unlikely candidate to be a children's pastor. He is not your typical, so when he's not here, he works at a church as a children's pastor. Most children's pastors are not like Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean is more of a theologian. He is very heady. Most children's pastors are normally fresh out of college or something like that they are not cut like that. That's an example where God's going to put you in. You're either going to be unlikely and unqualified or both. And when God puts you in that position, you're going to know, God put me here, and that's it. Our text leads off with a very astonishing statement. It says, "And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward." The person God directs you to He will make sure that he will be victorious. We are all here today because God made sure someone was victorious and never failed. We are able to experience eternal life because the Spirit never left him and he never failed. Christ completed his task of eternal salvation, and God never left him. The Spirit came on Christ when he was baptized, and at that point that the Father said, "This is my Son, in whom I am well pleased." The Spirit led him into the wilderness, and he was victorious over temptation. The Spirit led him, and he was victorious over a sickness. The Spirit led him, and he was victorious over demons. The Spirit led him all the way to the cross. And as he hung up there, he said, "It is finished." He completed his task. The Spirit led Christ so that everyone who believes in him will never perish and can see him when they die. Christ is the leader who never fails. Christ never failed once. Christ is available to all those who put their trust in him, all those who call on him. You will one day see him again. All you have to do is call on him. And you too will be victorious over sin, Satan, and the world, because you are in his army. In conclusion, our text DD describes what happens when leaders fail. God will come to your rescue. God will redirect you from focusing on the externals to the internals. And God will direct you to an unlikely and unqualified person as a leader. There is hope when leadership fails. And God will provide that. God has provided each one of us a leader in Jesus Christ. All you have to do is call on him, and you can be victorious as well. Let us walk with Christ so each one of us can be